Welcome back, everybody. We're excited that you're back as you continue on your journey to achieve nurse educator excellence. Now, some of you may be here to learn a little bit more about the role of a nurse educator. Some of you may be on the journey to achieve CNE, so we have some information for you too. Some of you may be on the journey to renew your CNE. Well, regardless of which category you fall into today, you are in the right place because we're going to make sure that we cover content that will help you achieve success, okay, no matter where you are in your nursing career. So, first and foremost, you heard some music playing. That kind of lightens up the mood a little bit. That's why we like using music. We want you to consider using music as therapy for you, whether you are a colleague that is currently in the clinical setting or maybe you are in academia. Music just really changes the mood and shifts the energy in our spaces. So we encourage you to use music whenever you can. So in this snapshot, we're continuing to focus on what are some of those evidence-based practices that will help you move forward on your journey. Okay, so if you're on the CNE journey, first step we want you to take is to go to the NLN website. That's nln.org. And then you're going to click in the upper heading NLN credentialing. And then you're going to open it up, that page up, and it will take you to the option of the certification division. There are 3 CNE exams. So we have the CNE, we have the CNE clinical, and we have the CNE novice, specifically for those colleagues that have less than 3 years of teaching experience, or maybe you are in the hospital setting. And for most of you all, we would recommend the CNE clinical exam. You can always email us if you have questions, info@drsellarseducate.com. All right, so now everybody has their handbook for the exam that they're going to take. The next resource we want you to pull out is Billings and Halstead. Okay, so we are in the 6th edition for a reason, but if you have the 7th edition, that's great too. There's not a lot of difference between the 6th and the 7th edition. You also have the crosswalk right down in the description of the snapshot in case you do have the 6th edition. Okay, we want to make sure you are following along using the right pages. If you have the 6th edition, we want you to focus on page 434. Specifically, this is going to focus on the online learner experience. We're talking about quality, continuous quality improvement. Okay, so we like to add that word continuous because we know it is an iterative process, which means that we pivot, we make corrections based on the data, based on the feedback that we're given about whether or not we're meeting the learning objectives and the learning outcomes, and ultimately making sure that our students, our nursing students, are engaged in safe patient care practices. Okay, so that's page 434. Now there's another page we want you to focus on because we're aligning our content today with the essentials as well as the NLN Hallmarks of Excellence and also the CCNE standards. Now I know all of you are not CCNE accredited, and that's okay. You can look at your standards for the organization or the accrediting body that you have to align with to make sure that you are in alignment with what their requirements are regarding continuous quality improvement. Okay, so if you're on the CCNE journey or if you are CCNE accredited, then this will resonate with you. Okay, so if you take a look in, again, the 6th edition, we are going to focus on Standard 2. So Standard 2, as it reads right now, we know that there are updates from time to time with the standards, but it is focused on faculty. All right, so currently it is Standard 2F that we want you to focus on. And it specifically says that the parent institution and program provide and support an environment that encourages faculty teaching, scholarship, service, and practice in keeping with the mission, goals, and expected faculty outcomes. Now, this is where it's important. The expected outcomes include faculty, number 1, perform activities in all aspects of the faculty role. Number 2, 100% of faculty participate in professional development opportunities annually. Okay, I'm going to read that again. 100% of faculty participate in professional development activities annually. This is where the continuous quality improvement element comes into play. Number 3, 100% of faculty have individual offices with computers and necessary equipment. And then number 4, classroom and labs are available and well equipped. Okay, the last 2 parts weren't relevant to our content, but the first two were. So we would just want to make sure that we are giving you specific references for you to go back, take a look at as you reflect on where you are today as it relates to these competencies and compliance and what your next steps need to be. All right, and while we're still in Billings and Halstead, I'm going to bring your attention to page 434, where it talks specifically about continuous quality improvement for the actual online learning experience. So it asks a question that I think is really good under reflecting on evidence. Okay, so that's page 435. Listen to this question. Number one says, what performance standards and metrics are measured when judging the quality of your online learning experiences? Okay, so we've integrated some elements, some best practices that we want you to consider in our time together today. And then on page 434, it specifically says, faculty must obtain feedback from students and colleagues about their work and use it continuously to improve course quality. Well, we know there are peer evaluations that take place, right? That's a standard as well. So those are two elements we want you to focus on. Looking at the CCNE standards or your accredited body, number one. Number two, take a look at where you are today as it relates to improvements that you're making with the online learner. The next resource, if you have your study workbook, we want you to pull it out. On page 57 is where we're talking about curriculum design and development. So this is the second area. First, we talked about faculty development related to continuous quality improvement. Now we want to hone in on curriculum design and development. Okay, so second paragraph says that it is a plan that is constantly reevaluated and updated to meet outcomes and the needs of the learners, community, and to respond to health care trends. This is an expectation that NLN has of us as it relates to the hallmarks of excellence and those nurse educator competencies as well. All right, so last reference we want to bring to your attention, of course, is our essentials. All right, so we have right here a paper copy of the essentials, but it's available online as well. So the specific domain we're going to focus on is domain 5.3. Okay, so looking at page 41, 5.3 says contribute to a culture of provider and work environment safety. Okay, but specifically what we're going to focus on is fostering, it's 5.3F, fostering a just culture reflecting civility and respect, and also 5.3H, role model and lead well-being and resiliency for self and team. I want you to take a moment to kind of reflect on how do these specific concepts and terms that we're discussing across all three of these evidence-based sources, that being the AACN Essentials, Billings and Halstead, as well as the NLN Hallmarks of Excellence, how do they show up in your actual learning experience that you plan for your students? All right, so I want you to think about that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to transition into taking a look at some additional information that we want to make sure that you are knowledgeable about as you continue on your journey. All right, so first of all, you may be wondering, what should I do, right? If you're on that journey to achieve CNE, our goal is that you are successful the first time. Now, we are going to support you until you are successful. That's our service guarantee, no matter how long it takes. And it took me almost 8 years to get CNE off of my bucket list for many reasons. And that's what we're on a mission to help you avoid. It does not take you 8 years to take the CNE exam. In fact, our primary focus is helping you pass the CNE exam in just 60 days, and it is absolutely possible. We heard from our colleague Betsy, who said, and we celebrated with her. So this is a director of a nursing program. She says, CNE in 60 days is just what I needed to guide my studying and pass at the first attempt. So round of applause. I know you all are applauding too. I just can't see you. She says, I really enjoyed the weekly Zoom meetings. They were engaging and appreciated the smaller size group of like educators. Yes, we are so thrilled to hear about the success of one of our colleagues. And the reason why we want to share that with you is to motivate you, to encourage you to say that you can absolutely go on this journey and achieve success as well. 60 days in this specific program that is focused on your ability to not get stuck, right? We do not allow anybody in our program to get stuck, right? We know there's momentum when you join us. You are also aligning your goals with everybody else that's in the room, and we keep our group small to make sure that you have the support and the specific resource that you need to achieve success. Okay, so if you don't take away any other point from the beginning of our time together in this snapshot, I want you to know there's only one resource that you need to achieve success. Only one. I know you may hear noise and you may get distracted with all the other resources, but this is evidence-based on the information that we have gathered from hundreds of nurse educator colleagues across the country. Billings and Halstead, right now, we're using, again, the 6th edition because based on the current exam that was developed, we heard from the exam writers at NLN during the summit that primarily they used 2 books, Billings and Halstead, and then the second book they used was Dr. Caputi's CNE Review Book, 2nd edition. Okay, even though I realize we've already looked at the handbook, that the reference list was updated and Billings and Halstead is no longer there. However, we know that they did use, the exam writers did use Dr. Caputi's CNE Review Book. We also know that we have a 98 to 100% success rate for colleagues that follow our CNE in 60 days plan, and that includes a 7-week study plan. All right, so now let's take a look at our content as we make sure that you are, first of all, clear about this thought-provoking question. And second of all, we want to make sure that you're walking away with a solid plan. So speaking of solid plan, if you haven't already, go ahead and print out the study worksheet. It is located right here in the description, or you can simply pull out a sheet of paper, okay? And what you're going to write down on that paper right now is number 1, the date. Whatever date you're watching this snapshot, we want to make sure that you can reference the notes that you are taking as you move forward with your plan. Okay, so there's a lot of research that talks about our ability to remember information if we write it down. Some research says that we're 70% at least more likely to retain information, to remember what we learned, what we heard, when we actually write it down. This is a journey all about alignment to create this culture of continuous quality improvement. So there's something exciting about nursing that I have found to be exciting anyway. And that is that there's always more to learn, no matter what, right? We never ultimately arrive. There's always room for improvement. Next thing I want you to write down on your paper is 10,000. Okay, so 10,000 hours. What do you think this means? Why do we even have this on a slide? All right, so go ahead and write down why you think 10,000 hours is important for our conversation today. Well, for those of you that are avid readers of Malcolm Gladwell, I am definitely a fan of the work that he has done. He did a lot of research, and it was actually published in the book Outliers that he wrote. His work says that it takes 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to master a skill. We want to be intentional. So there's a qualitative element, right? That deliberate practice being very intentional. As an example, in the spirit of where we are right now with basketball, football season for some, we want to think about what actual skill am I working on the court or on the field to get better at? So example, if I'm a quarterback, is it really going to matter how I tackle? Probably not, right? So I'm probably not working on my tackling ability if I'm a quarterback. What about this analogy? What if I am an expert three-point shooter like Steph Curry? I have to put that plug in for him because he just set a record not too long ago for making the most three-pointers in NBA history. Isn't that amazing? Okay, you can Google it to find out more. So just think about it. And Steph Curry is one of my favorite basketball players. You think about the number of hours that he had to spend on getting better. That's why he's one of my favorite players, because he didn't grow up with this natural talent. Now, some will argue that his father was a professional NBA player. However, we know that he was questioned about his size. He was very small when he was younger. And so there were lots of doubts. There were lots of fears, anxiety, even probably that he experienced, and wondering if he would ever master the skill of being an excellent three-point shooter. Well, not only did he master it, right? He has set a record that nobody else has been able to set, at least up until now. This is what we want you to take away from this information. Write it down for yourself. How many hours do you invest in your craft of getting better? Becoming a better nurse educator, step one. But step two is, how do I master? How do I achieve that highest level of skill associated with a specific educator strategy that you're using? I like to use Poll Everywhere as an example. My ability to use Poll Everywhere and do a good job at it was different 10 years ago than it is today. And why is that? Because I was deliberate. I wanted to intentionally focus on getting better and using the resources that are available to me with that great software. All right, so here's your thought-provoking question. Research and evidence-based practices are key elements of quality improvement for a nurse educator. Systems, models, and theories provide the framework to organize and prioritize educator activities for improvement. So which self-improvement activity would best align with this and for our nurse educator excellence and are seen as evidence-based? I would add that part if I could type it over. We'll have to work on that. All right, so A is incorporate self-reflective activities. B is mentoring new faculty member. Or C is serving on curriculum committee. So think about, what is this question really asking me, which is which self-improvement activity would best align with this area of nurse educator excellence. So we have a typo. We'll have to update that. So it's supposed to be area, with this area of nurse educator excellence. And this is one of the issues, right, when we write exam questions. Research says that if there's a typo like what we have, good thing this is a thought-provoking question, right? But it's an unintended example of how it can be a distractor for the student, and it could lead to the student not answering the question correctly. All right, so I'll be quiet so you all can think through what the best response is. All right, excellent. So we'll come back at the end of our time together to make sure you have the correct option, despite my typo, right? Hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. Quality matters, not just when it comes to patient care, which the essentials have identified, and we know CUSIN has standards as well. But in this snapshot, we're taking a different spin on it, right? We're focusing on, why does quality matter in the online learning experience, right? It matters there too. We want to make sure our students are engaged and truly are partnering with us on this journey to learn, to actually be able to walk away with a tangible understanding, right, with deep comprehension of those concepts in a way that allows them to make safe patient care decisions. So quality matters. I encourage you all, if you're not familiar with it, there's information in Billings and Halstead. Let's go there together, and I will tell you the page number, that they've actually dedicated quite a number of pages to it. Okay, so quality matters, you're going to actually find that in Billings and Halstead. This is the 6th edition. That's going to start on page 406. So 406, generally through 419, is going to give you some guidance, but you know, the best resource is going right to their website. Okay, they have the rubric actually that you can use to do that self-assessment, to do a check on where your online courses are in comparison to the standards that they have outlined. We're just going to talk about one key element associated with the Quality Matters work. First, we want to just lay that foundation, and what the research says, that learner engagement and outcomes, there is a direct correlation. So when our learners are more engaged, when they are actually listening to the actual discussions that we're having, to the content that we're covering, it actually helps them learn better. I know it's no surprise for us, but for our students, sometimes it's surprising. We want them to pay attention because they're able to better understand the concepts when that happens. Engagement has been found to significantly enhance learning outcomes and retention rates. Thinking back to what we started with, right? You pulling out a sheet of paper, that good old-fashioned piece of paper with a pen, and writing this information down, because it increases our retention rates and it increases our engagement when we're physically involved in the learning process. And let's talk about that, because you see this image here of a student, assumingly, that has her laptop open. Well, this is another way to increase engagement. Tell the students to bring their laptops to class. We know that so many textbooks are online, right? There's a digital resource that they have using their textbooks. And so we want them to bring their laptops to class. We want them to look at the page numbers in their textbook, just like I did with you all, with the resources. That's going to also increase engagement and hopefully lead to high impact teaching practices. For those of you that are not familiar with Quality Matters, let's just level set for everybody in the room. So the Quality Matters framework provides a structured approach, and I would even add standardized approach to evaluating and improving online learning. A tip for you all to know, not only does Quality Matters help with standardizing what our online courses should and should not include, it also helps us with our in-person classes too. I know I had that experience in going through the Quality Matters checklist many years ago for the first time. So the key component we're going to focus on in our time together today is course design review. Okay, so the first question you want to ask yourself in looking at that rubric and in looking at the course that you already have designed is, look at the structure of the course. How do students navigate? How do they move from one module to the next? And is it accessible for our students that may have learning impairments? They may have some disabilities. Have we looked at whether or not it is friendly to those learners that may have some accessibility challenges? Okay, so that's step number one, is making sure the structure is correct, just the content that you've included, making sure that the objectives are clear, that they're measurable, that they're aligned with your actual evaluations or assessment tools. So let me give you an example. This is one that I get all the time. With my actual online course, I teach at the graduate level. So for my students, they often have questions about one particular assignment, and it is in my quality class, oddly enough. And in that class, they have to actually identify 5 different data sources from the CMS website, and they have to write down the definition of that data source, specific measures that are associated with that data source, and what are some of those data points that are concerning based on the report that they are reviewing. So oftentimes I get the question of, well, am I supposed to use a table, or what kind of format do you want? So what did we do as faculty? Well, we decided that there would be a template. I know, it's amazing, right? When you give students a template, when you give them clear instructions, then they are hopefully more likely to follow it, right? Same thing with the rubric. That's another great example. It's clear about what our expectations are and the points associated with that level of work that students are able to provide. My son he's in a graduate program, the MBA program online, and he was taking a marketing class. And his faculty member said she was so impressed with the paper that he completed. Well, you want to know why she was so impressed with the final project that he delivered? Because he just happened to be on spring break when we were talking about that paper. And he asked me, he said, okay, Mom, what do you think I should include in this section? Well, you know what I said? I know this is rocket science, right? Well, what does the rubric say? Imagine that. He followed the rubric. So he scored extremely high on his final paper because I simply asked a question. Have you followed the rubric? What does the rubric say? He had looked at the objectives. He knew that he was supposed to include a mission statement, a vision statement, but he didn't know exactly which elements to include. Okay, so again, we want to ensure that we have those specific objectives aligned with the points to include a rubric of how we're going to evaluate and validate the students have successfully completed that assignment. All right, so here's the second component you want to consider, and that is making sure that the materials support student learning effectively. A good example would be the textbook. So making sure that we map content in that textbook to the actual learning objectives, and ultimately, if we have an exam or the assessments that we're using, making sure that the resource, textbook, literature, articles, actually supports closing the knowledge gap for our students. And then the third element we want you to consider is the ease of navigation to prevent learner confusion. Now, this one is definitely more of an art. There's some science element to it, but it is an art, and that's why we have curriculum design and course design experts. They have a natural ability to be able to look at a course and figure out for us where the flaws are, where the challenges are when it comes to navigation, right? Course design is definitely an art. We know there are some evidence-based practices that Quality Matters identifies for us regarding what that should look like, but you want to make sure that you're engaging with those experts within your institution that can help you, those curriculum layout, the course design experts that can help us. All right, so look at there, we corrected that. In this slide, we corrected it. Now we got to go back and correct the original slide. So if you chose A, incorporate self-reflective activities, give yourself a round of applause. That is the correct answer, especially if you chose the correct answer despite our typo on the original slide. This is what we want you to think about. Where are you today? The good news is this is just a thought-provoking question. We have several resources that can help you. If you are challenged with staying on track with your journey towards nurse educator excellence, we recommend the monthly boot camp. And there are two reasons why. Number one, the sessions are recorded, which is important because we know that educators are busy and you have lots of competing priorities. The second reason why is because we are accredited as a provider. So what that means is you're able to earn continuing education credits, and it helps you with your CCNE renewal credits as well. We align all of our curriculum, whether it's our snapshots here or our actual programs, our boot camps, our masterclass CCNE in 60 days. We align it with evidence-based content so that you can feel confident that you are moving forward with the right resources to help you close your knowledge gap. So what's your number? You can feel free to put it right here in the comments or just write it on your sheet of paper. How are you feeling about your competency related to the content we covered today? Okay, so are you feeling lost? That's a 1. Or do you feel like you're ready to teach? That's a 5. Research tells us that we are 70 to 80% more likely to achieve success with comprehending a concept and being able to apply that concept to an actual experience when we teach it, especially if we shrink that window between the time we learn that skill or that specific content area and we actually get to apply it. The CCNE exam is at that 70 to 80% threshold. Okay, so it is at that higher level when it comes to application and analysis, okay, on that cognitive learning domain. So 70 to 80% of the questions are going to be aligned with action, execution, just like the NCLEX Next Gen for our pre-licensure students. If you have other questions, we are here to support you until you are successful, no matter how long that takes. You can find all the information that you will need to help you take the next step on our website, drsellarseducate.com, or you can email us if you have other questions, info@drsellarseducate.com. We hope that this snapshot has been helpful, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have a great one, everybody.